Who on earth would do this to a Gibson Les Paul Custom? Perhaps he was a bit mad. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So today we're going to talk about this Gibson Les Paul Custom that was put on Reverb. It's by Scott's shop. It's in Glendale, Arizona. He wants $4,500 for it, but when I saw the thumbnail of this one, it's like, that looks a little bit strange. Most Gibsons from the factory don't have like a natural finish with nickel and chrome hardware. It looks like our pickguard's missing here, and potentially, is this the finish stripped off the guitar? That was my first initial impression here, and the more and more photos we go through this, the more that appears to be the case. You can almost see like some sort of other finish that has dyed the wood just a hair. It looks like we've got the newer style Schaller strap blocks on it, so this has definitely been somebody's modification project. But I was actually looking at some of my old videos, and I ran across the old ash top alder bodied Les Paul Custom, and at first I thought, is that one of those? Because it had the similar up and down wood grain pattern going on, but no, it's not. But as soon as we get to the edges, that's when you know that's not the Gibson finish anymore. So I'm thinking, this is probably like a early 2000s Les Paul Custom that met some sort of an unfortunate fate, and it had to be amateurly refinished because they couldn't afford a proper job. Sadly, during this refinish process, we've lost our ink stamped serial number, which is kind of a big no-no if we're being honest here, because this could have been a stolen guitar at one point in time. Not saying that it is, but if you're trying to erase the history of a guitar, that's one way to do it, besides the obvious vintage style scratching out the serial number so everybody knows. So that's potentially an ominous part of its history. But you're probably wondering, hey Trogly, why is this the main feature? A stripped Les Paul Custom, we see those every single day in the mod collection that gets refinished into something else. No, my friends. This is why we're talking about it. This is a brand new 2022 Gibson Les Paul Custom. And somebody stripped the finish off of it. I mean, it looks like it might have started life as like a cherry sunburst or something, looking back here, because it's got the red coloring in here. I guess it could have really been anything if that was just aniline dyed. But then right here, it was originally sourced from Melody Music Shop. I've actually bought from them a couple of times. They're a great shop, but yeah, there's your original serial number here. So this documentation kind of helps, but they really should have at least let the serial number be alone on the backside of the headstock. But this one was born at the very end of February. So that means this likely got to the shop March, April at best, and Melody doesn't sell factory seconds or pieced together guitars. So within 5 months, somebody's brand new Les Paul Custom, these are like $5,000 to $6,000 new, they took the finish off of it. That's spooky. Who in their right mind would do that? And just in case you're not familiar, removing original finish from a guitar devalues it instantly by at least 50%. But it looks like they kept all the original gold hardware in your pickguard if you wish to reinstall all this stuff. And you might say, hey, this is that guy's guitar. He can do whatever he wants with it. And maybe he thought he was going to keep this forever and tour and gig with it, and he just liked the feel of a raw satin finish, or maybe even something even below that. However, the fact that it's up for sale within such short time, very unfortunate. He says he stripped it down to natural, and it started as a red Les Paul Custom, and the new finish is just tongue oiled. But we've got Friedman humbuckers in there, looks like the classic models, Mojo tone, all this other good stuff. Kind of a chunky one at almost 10 pounds. I mean, it's cool if you guys want a project or something, but I would heavily suggest at least buying a used one. And maybe that's what he did. Maybe he didn't buy it brand new. Maybe he got it at a good deal, because Melody Music Shop, they're not sponsoring tonight's episode, but I know if you call them up, they can give you some pretty good deals. So even though he's done all that to it, even if he takes a lower offer, he may or may not lose as much as you might think. But next up, I have a 60s melody maker that met an unfortunate fate. It's being offered on eBay. They want $3,200 as the opening bid. To that, I say good luck, but let's check it out anyways. So it's not a single cut melody maker, and it's not quite the version that came right after that. This actually looks like the mid-60s variation. You know, the ones that I call freaky fish shapes. However, that's actually a pretty rare finish on one of those. Like the shapes before that, it was very common to find this sunburst, but usually you find cherry on these guys, sometimes a rare Pelham blue, but I think this might be the first sunburst one I've seen. However, normally these look like this. You can find single and double pickup varieties, but this is what the double one would look like. You've got your dot inlays, all that good stuff. But then we come over here, we can see a lot has been changed. We've got a humbucker in the bridge, humbucker added in the middle, and then it looks like an original Melody Maker pickup, but installed upside down for the neck. That's my favorite thing about this thing. I'm sure if you flip that around, you might actually see a larger area like this one that comes out farther than the rest. At least that's what I'd like to believe, but you'd probably see some wires sticking out here, so maybe that's not what it is, but it certainly looks like that. But judging by this pick guard and the way that it says Melody Maker here has all that stuff, this likely started life as the double pickup variety. It looks like you still even have your original knobs. This one's probably been replaced though. If you look really closely, it's definitely the more modern version. This photo definitely seals its fate. But what's going on here? My best guess is somebody has replaced the original wraparound tailpiece in order to have an intonatable one. It looks like maybe a Schaller made part. However, it looks like they needed to ground it off somehow. And instead of just taking a little wire, wrapping it around the post, and feeding it underneath your pickguard into here, they decided to put a nail in the guitar. And I'm sure there was a better way to do that, but, you know, it's kind of rustic and vintage. It gives it a vibe. And maybe in editing, when we zoom in here, we'll see it's actually something else. But I see this as like the nail head, and then this is like a wire that goes around it. But then, check this out. Mother of pearl block inlays. That's pretty sweet. Normally you don't have that. Unfortunately, we only have 2 photos, but if you've been watching the show for a while, there's a reason why you can't convert dot inlaid guitars into the fancier inlays, and it all comes down to your 12th fret. Now, unfortunately, the seller doesn't zoom in on this. Maybe they don't realize it, but you can actually see the filled in dot inlays there. So you know that wasn't factory original for 1000%. So usually your options to get around that is you make the 12th one larger, or you just make them all larger, and you just end up making the whole guitar look strange if you were going for factory original stylings. But then we flip over to the back. Everything's actually looking pretty good back here. Just average wear and tear. Looks like even still the original strap button, miraculously. But of course, the original tuners had to go. You've got modern day Grovers on there, and our serial number is intact. Looks like a pretty poor nut replacement, but at least our truss rod appears to be in good shape. So here's the big question. Is it worth $32? I somewhat alluded to my thoughts on that previously. However, a lot of the value of this guitar, like in this chopped up modded state, I mean, it's probably worth maybe $1,200. I mean, it's got the kind of rare finish, maybe 15-ish. But what pickups are in here matters greatly. If these are original patent sticker T-tops from the 60s, I mean, that's like $800 right here. So he might not be all that far off. You can always tell a modern versus a vintage humbucker styling by how rounded the pickup covers are. These are pretty rounded, so it's got a pretty nice fighting chance to be in something good. But unfortunately, we don't have any photos that show the backside of it. But maybe our description will be able to tell us. So he says no breaks, cracks, or repairs. He says it plays well, honest play wear. He is 100,000% correct. I love 65 Melody Makers. They look stupid, but they are fantastic. They've got a really special neck profile to them. But unfortunately, nothing. If you're the seller of this, please take these 4 little screws out and then post pics of it. That is going to help you tremendously with this sale. You could have a hidden gem in there. I mean, imagine if it's a real PAF. You might be selling this thing too cheap. You just never know what people put in these vintage Melody Makers. That's why whenever I see one of these heavily modded ones, I'm always paying close attention here. Because occasionally you find good stuff. Like, here's another one with even worse photos, but similar mods. Somebody put Fraley Grovers on it, and then there's 2 humbuckers. The stock single coils in these guitars, they're not the best. I mean, they're not absolute trash, but they've got a vintage charm. And then I've got 3 more quick ones for you tonight. This one's being advertised as a Gibson Explorer from the late 70s. And oh my, it was definitely modified in the 80s and current day. So we have some sort of a aftermarket Kaler that was installed in here. That kind of looks like an 80s ultra brass part. I know Fender used stuff like that. I wonder if it came off of one of those. But you can see the original filled in stop bar studs right there. But then we've got the modern day P94 pickups in here. All right. But you might be noticing, this one's got a carved edge. Like it's really been rounded over. And if you really look at the finish, you can kind of tell, yeah, that's definitely not the original finish. So somebody has kind of sanded this Explorer down a little bit. And that's kind of why it looks a bit strange here. And then they put a new finish on it. And then obviously new knobs. But wow, they really over sanded. That's my best guess. At least the headstock doesn't look too half bad with the choker. But oh no! Thankfully, there's better ways to install locking nuts nowadays. And alright, yeah, the back definitely shows you how much sanding they did. They really took that in. I mean, they were probably trying to make it more like an E2 that came out after this guitar, but I like the sculpting of the cutaway right here. That'd probably be a very comfortable guitar to play, but they definitely made that thin. So is it worth $2,250? Maybe, to the right guy. I mean, if you don't mind everything that's been done to it, generally these Explorers will sell around $35,000 to $4,000 just for the regular one. Now, if you get the limited edition first year production, then it goes even crazier. So this guy is priced within reality. But hey, let's check out this modern day melody maker. Unfortunately, the photos are very, very small, so we're gonna have to zoom in here and we're gonna lose some clarity. I think they attempted to relic it. Maybe they set it on fire. I'm not sure, but it's got a vibe. I mean, it's not absolutely terrible if you've got a Halloween gig and you wanna say like, oh yes, the werewolf scratched at it as the wind was beckoning it to do its will. And worst case scenario, you can sand it flat and paint it black. And that's a similar story of what we have over here. So this is being advertised as Gibson Les Paul Special Natural Electric Guitar. And this is one of those M2-like series guitars, where the M2 lineup had a really cool one, which you can check out this episode if you need to learn more. And then you had two different Les Pauls that are of similar styling, but different specs. You had an SG, and then obviously the infamous Firebird Zero. Those guitars came in a whole bunch of delicious flavors. Brown was not one of them. Not like this anyway. So this has definitely been refinished. However, I think this looks pretty good. It's got a vintage styling to it. I mean, it's no wonder Gibson currently offers this finish on their budget level ones, but it looks like somebody's upgraded most of the parts. The stock pickups in this run, they're garbage if you go into them thinking these are going to be awesome humbuckers. Now, if you go into them thinking these are going to be kind of weird single coil sounding things, you're going to like it. And that's how I still feel about the Firebird Zero, but I'm sure a lot of people will want to replace those. That's probably why this got a whole big modification. I mean, remember, you could get these things pretty cheap brand new back then. So this makes sense to buy a new guitar and refinish it, not the Gibson custom shop. But I would say the stain job, it looks pretty good from the photos. However, how it feels in person sometimes varies greatly. All right, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.